Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today I am going to talk to you about the educational views of Jiddu Krishnamurti. I am Manjunath, working as a lecturer in sociology in the Department of Pre-University Education, Bangalore. This module of Jiddu Krishnamurti is a part of the course of Education and Society in the subject of Sociology. Jiddu Krishnamurti was an educational philosopher. He has written extensively on issues of education in general and the overall personality development of children in particular. According to him, education is not just about preparing a child for some part of life, but it is a process in which a child is prepared for an entire lifetime of learning. His views on education are integrated with the ideas on life, humanity, and world. He had a holistic understanding of education. That is the reason why his concerns for education have great contemporary relevance. In his view, the right kind of education is concerned with individual freedom, which alone can bring true cooperation with the whole. J. Krishnamurti's educational ideas cannot be separated from his overall thoughts. He attended to all day-to-day educational problems with a deep understanding and insights. His educational understanding of education include ideas such as intentions of education, physical nature of the places of education, and others, which are explained in detail in this module. Jiddu Krishnamurti was born in 1895 in the small town of Madras Presidency. His father, Jiddu Narayan, had worked as an official in the British administration. The childhood of Krishnamurti was not an easy one. His experiences with the Theosophical Society had a deep impact on his thinking. He did not belong to any religious organization or sect, nor did he adhere to any political ideology. Throughout his life, Krishnamurti travelled extensively talking about the need for bringing about a radical change in human beings. The intentions of education. Krishnamurti frequently stated the intentions of educational centers he founded in very unequivocal terms and religious terms. He was of the view that children must be rightly educated so that they become religious human beings. According to Krishnamurti, these centers of education indicate a way of life which is not based on the goal of achieving pleasure. The emphasis must be on the understanding of right action, building meaningful relationships, and the sacredness of religious life. These centers of learning exist, as Krishnamurti says, for the enlightenment of human beings. In his own words, surely they must be centers of learning, a way of life which is not based on pleasure, on self-centered activities, but on the understanding of correct action, the depth and beauty of relationship, and the sacredness of religious life. He always criticized the kind of education which merely fulfills the objective of obtaining a degree or a job using knowledge only for self-satisfaction. He never felt that education is to be seen as a mechanism for thrusting a lot of information on the child. Education is usually taken to be an organized, purposive activity with pre-established goals. His view that truth is a pathless land, it cannot be organized, provides a base for rethinking the very goal of education. He located education in the active, existential, living present and considered it as a cooperative exploration by the teacher and student. The real intention of education is to achieve freedom and the overall transformation of society. Here, Krishnamurti uses freedom as more of an inner aspect of human beings rather than being political in nature. Both parents and teachers need to give students the freedom to choose their future options. Education is not meant to cultivate technical competencies, but its primary focus must be on the making people realize the true value of freedom. In the modern world, most often educational institutions concentrate on technical realms in which pupils mechanically learn without thinking of consequences. This in turn leads to destruction and does not do good to humanity. He sees education not with the eyes of a reformer or as a means to serve this or that end, but as an intrinsic, self-fulfilling experience requiring no further justification. The function of education, he said, is to bring out a mind that will not only act in the immediate but go beyond. A mind that is extraordinarily alive, not with knowledge, not with experience, but alive. More important than making the child technologically proficient is the creation of the right climate in the school for the child to develop fully as a complete human being. This means giving him the opportunity to flower in goodness so that he is rightly related to people, things, and ideas, to the whole of life. The second aspect, the physical nature of places of education. Krishnamurti has also laid emphasis on the physical nature of educational centers. In his philosophical understanding of education, Krishnamurti focused his attention on the three aspects of physical nature of educational center. All the schools started by him are known for their pleasing physical ambience, which is serene and aesthetically appealing. A pleasing school environment is not just about beauty, but aesthetically appealing surroundings are necessary for proper development of a child's personality. Krishnamurti connected aesthetics to religion. He expected his staff to develop an appreciation for beauty and always ensured that they adhered to this rule. In the designing of educational centers, Krishnamurti gave a pivotal place to nature. He felt that relationship with nature had a significant impact on the development of a child's personality. His schools are mostly located in the countryside and places close to nature. Krishnamurti insisted that each educational center must have special areas to maintain silence and religiosity. He often spoke to the students of the importance of a quiet mind and silence so that they could concentrate on their thoughts. He used to tell his students, "You see, meditation means to have a very quiet, still mind, not a chattering mind. To have a really quiet mind so that your mind becomes religious." He was of the opinion that mind of a religious man is a very quiet, sane, rational, logical, and one needs such a mind. He emphasized that such special places must be in the center of educational institutions rather than in the periphery. Apart from the atmosphere created by the aesthetics and special areas in educational institutions, Krishnamurti says that at least a part of the atmosphere must be created by the participants themselves. This atmosphere is another link in understanding the religiousness of education. A place may carry an atmosphere, but it is the people who create it or destroy it. To illustrate this, he would cite places that at one time were known to have had a very special and powerful atmospheres, but which were destroyed through neglect, incompetence, and corrupt behavior. Krishnamurti noted that there are two categories of participants in education: staff and students. He perceived staff as those who are in regular contact with educational environment, if not directly with students. He used to say that every function of the staff, however small it may be, was very significant for the growth of a child. He distinguished the participants of education from the participants of any other organization, such as hospitals, police, etc. The single reason he gives for such uniqueness being seen in the participants of education is their religious fervor, attitude, and behavior which stand distinct in an educational setting. In J. Krishnamurti model of education, there was no hierarchical order in which staff and students were placed. However, there were some differences among them with regard to their experience and responsibilities. Though he laid emphasis on the need for religious fervor in education, he maintained that the participants in this system do not belong to any clan, sect, or to an organized religion. It is evidently pertinent that staff had some authority over certain parts of educational activities, such as, for example, administration or gardening. However, the major goal of education is to achieve inner liberation and freedom. Krishnamurti repeatedly pointed out that both staff and students are learners and therefore both are equal. He noted that authority has its place as knowledge, but there is no spiritual authority under any circumstances. That is, authority destroys freedom, but the authority of a doctor, mathematics teacher, and how he teaches, that doesn't destroy freedom. When discussing the selection process for students and staff at his English Educational Center, Krishnamurti always stressed the importance of the candidates being their deepest sensitivities, goodness and intelligence, and the depth of their questions about themselves and the world. Although he wanted both staff and students to be intellectually sound, he never stressed academic prowess, cultural abilities, or capacities as being more important than the willingness and ability to lead what he called a religious life. In one memorable discussion, Krishnamurti questioned the staff about all the qualities they looked for in prospective students. He then described himself as a boy. He said he had been vague, shy, dreamy, and bad in academics, but sensitive, full of wonder, trusting, and affectionate. He would want to know from his teachers if, according to the criteria they had just enunciated, they would have accepted him as a child. Krishnamurti's point of view was that education is fundamentally the art of learning, not only from books, but from the whole cycle of life. A student has to learn about the nature of the intellect, its dominance, its activities, its vast capacities, and its destructive power. Learning is not from a book, but from the observation of the world, about people, without theories, prejudices, and values. Krishnamurti writes about the method of education in the following passage. If one really has something to say, the very saying of it creates its own style. But learning a style without inward experiencing can only lead to superficiality. Likewise, people who are experiencing and therefore teaching are the only real teachers, and they too will create their own technique. To him, schooling was without competition and comparison. When A is compared to B, who is clever, bright, assertive, that very comparison destroys A. This destruction takes the form of competition, of imitation, and conformity to the patterns set by B. This breeds antagonism, jealousy, anxiety, and even fear. And this becomes the condition in which A lives for the rest of his life. Krishnamurti's views on education clearly indicate that he gave a prime place to freedom and order in the teaching-learning process. He laid great stress on values such as punctuality, kindness, generosity, and fearlessness. One has to discover discipline through the practice of these values. By avoiding constraint, one does not become free. There is need to develop clarity of perception, which is in essence from self. Only respect for freedom could lead to development of healthy relationships. To conclude that, Krishnamurti is essentially a philosopher of education. His teachings had a core concern for education. He also finds a place as an important educational thinker in courses on educational theory and philosophy. The educational issues raised by Krishnamurti, like place of knowledge in education, freedom and discipline, learning from nature, role of sensory experience and observation, comparison and competition, are of such abiding concern that they have been discussed by several educational thinkers in the past and continue to hold contemporary relevance. He dealt with issues pertaining to education not just as being part of mechanical teaching learning process, but as concerns that had to be addressed if a meaningful system of education had to be evolved. His educational thoughts provide a framework for revisiting methodologies of outcomes of the present system of education. Krishnamurti's writings, talks, and reflections on education have also generated a lot of thinking on various aspects of schooling, teaching, and learning.